We are here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for Ohio State's first media availability since their Peach Bowl loss, and we heard from Ryan Day, among other assistant coaches. And Jacob, the big topic of conversation was this looming quarterback battle. What's going to go into naming a starter for this upcoming season for the first time since after Justin Fields' departure, where we've really seen sort of a dueling quarterback battle where it's sort of anybody's game. Ryan Day talked about leadership, the ability to be put in game-like situations and be able to thrive. And I mean, we got a glimpse at Devin Brown throwing during the Peach Bowl in those open practices. We didn't really see much from Kyle McCord, but we've seen in-game action from him, being able to step in when C.J. Stroud, in his first season as a starter, had sort of that shoulder issue. So I think that's sort of the mantra is they're going to be put in game-like situations, and it's going to be starting from ground zero. And I think it's sort of, at this point, anybody's fight.
You know, and you mentioned Devin Brown there. What stands out to me is that big toss there at the end of the open practice that we saw. But really, more of the reps that he had that day that he was running, they were showcasing how Ohio State would fill gaps and create lanes. And we ultimately saw that work out with C.J. Stroud in the Peach Bowl running and whatnot. But, you know, to see Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, and really to me the big takeaway is that Ryan Day said that both of them will compete for reps. So that it's clear that those two are going to spearhead that quarterback competition that Ohio State's going to see throughout the spring. Ryan Day mentioned that he wants to have a vision of who that starter will be at the end of the spring. And of course, you know, spring practices start here in about a month in March. You know, Kyle McCord has a really big arm. That's the perception there. Devin Brown can mix it up a little bit, can get it done on the ground and through the air. And so I think that's two really different quarterback styles. And man, it's going to be interesting. And I think with the losses on the offensive line, it's going to make it interesting as well.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other conversations was around NIL and sort of the big picture of college football. Ohio State, sort of the narrative has been that they're falling behind in NIL and they're losing recruits and they're losing transfers because they're not offering sort of this monumental NIL package for some of these recruits.
And it's an interesting situation. Getting to talk with Mark Pantoni, who's the general manager of sorts for the football program, just has a really large role in the front office. He mentions how his days are full of 8-9 hours of film and evaluation, recruiting and transfer portal. But, you know, hitting on the NIL topic, you know, Ryan Day mentioned again today the frustrations with the lack of guidelines, where programs can and can't talk about certain things or make offers. And you know, one thing that I've really respected from Ryan Day and Ohio State throughout the entire process of, you know, the questions and uncertainty around NIL is that he's stayed focused on, you know, this is how we do things. This culture that we've built around Ohio State, that's what's number one. It's not about getting that NIL money, and even though it's a really different and new thing, come to Ohio State to get developed, and then you move on to either the NFL or your post-football career, and that's really been the priority for Ryan Day, and that's what stood out to me the most.
Right, and it's kind of interesting you talk about the culture of the Buckeyes and being able to be developed and move on to the NFL. One of the guys that lived that was James Laurinaitis. He was hired as a grad assistant. He's going to be helping with the linebackers, and we got to hear from him for the first time today. He was really talking about some of the different reasons he came back. He said he just loves teaching. Being able to teach is sort of his drive. Like, he really loves being able to break things down from a fundamental standpoint, get to the very root level of things at the very most basic level. And he was talking about how he had to rent a house up in South Bend just for that 1 year. And now, sure enough, he's back in Columbus just after that 1 year he spent with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I think it's really interesting, especially with the losses to Michigan these past 2 years, trying to rebuild sort of that Buckeye culture and sort of that silver bullet mindset.
You know, listening to a little bit of Jim Knowles and just Perry Eliano, even on the defense, they talked about getting down to the fundamentals, the technique and execution, and it comes down to things as simple as that. And the addition of James Laurinaitis, you know, they've talked about how it's such a great hire for Ohio State because he brings so much experience. They talked so much about how Ohio State has almost a half dozen number of former players on its coaching staff, and you know, speaking to that culture point, they've been around Ohio State long enough that it's ingrained in them. It's developed here. That's the tagline there for Ohio State. And you know, to see another player like James Laurinaitis who, you know, could get it done on the field, but also had those intangibles. And to me, that's what sticks out, to be that leader, to go through adversity. And as you mentioned, the back-to-back Michigan losses, Ohio State's doing a little bit of soul searching maybe. Where is it in the Big Ten compared to programs like Michigan, Penn State, etc. And you know, to see James Laurinaitis back around, you can tell that it's a good vibe.
Right, and It's funny, he opened, when he first sat down, he said he has PTSD to Luke Fickell, sort of yelling at him on these fields. Now he's going to be the one getting after players, among other coaches, as Ohio State, they move into their spring practice and their summer practice here coming forward. But for now, for Jacob Benge, I'm Casey Smith. This is a Lantern Sports wrap-up show. Until next time, take care.